Actress Gwyneth Paltrow has been facing trial for a ski collision case that had occurred in 2016 at the Utah ski resort. In the latest turn of events, Paltrow's attorney, Steve Owens, has criticized the media for placing a camera during this trial. However, the media personnel had already received approval for positioning this camera there from a court public information officer. Now, Judge Kent Holmberg has asked for the removal of this camera post this being brought up by Paltrow's attorney. Meanwhile, the court is yet to publish their list of witnesses as both parties continue blaming each other for the collision. The decision is all on the 10 jurors who are to interpret the evidences that were produced in the court throughout the course of this trial.
Mr. Owens?
Well, thank you, Your Honor. The camera that I referenced was a violation of the decorum order. That's the second violation in 2 days. Directly, still photographer directly on my client's face, already transmitted nationally. So I'm mad. The decorum order we spent a lot of time on. It's the court's order. People are subject to criminal sanction, and I want it to stop. I don't want to have to be the one raising it. I want them to comply.
The camera's been removed. As far as what's going on in the parking lot, I'm not going to conflate that with this photographer who's doing something differently. What's going on in the parking lot is Tanya's has worked with your staff in determining how to handle the parking lot transitions, and I think that's been smoothed out. In terms of violation of the court's decorum order and have the camera pointing where it's not supposed to be pointing, I mean, essentially, cameras are supposed to follow the microphone. This is what the court has permitted is media coverage of the proceeding, not of the individuals who aren't participating in the proceeding when they're not participating. So if you're speaking into a microphone, you can expect that an image may be captured. If you're not speaking into a microphone, you should not be expecting that an image would be captured. And I do see this as a violation, and I've asked that the reporter be told that this is now interrupting our proceedings. It's now interfering with our proceedings, having to deal with these issues. And if it happens again, the offending reporter will be asked to leave.
Great. And the still photographer is to stay in his seat when taking pictures. Is that right? Stay in his location.
Unless we're all standing, then they can stand and take a picture.
How about entering and exiting? Can they be in the path of my client?
No.
Thank you.
I think based on the stated testimony of the defendant, Craig Ramon, who was the only eyewitness, and based upon the pattern of injuries that are present here, what I believe happened is that he was struck from the left side, and that forced him into the ground. It's also been the testimony here that Ms. Paltrow was on top of him at some point, so the combined weight of the two individuals slamming into the ground caused the fracture and the head injury. And I don't think it would be plausible that if he were running into her that he would have broken the ribs on the side of his chest. He likely would have had his arms extended. He would have protected himself. He would have had knees, arms, etc. in front of his chest. And so he might have had other injuries. He could have broken a leg or an arm or a wrist or something like that. But in terms of a frontal collision, had he run into Ms. Paltrow, I don't think he would have had these types of injuries.
Dr. Gibby, you can certainly take the stand and be ready. Carrie, did you let the jury know that we're ready? Carrie, did you let the jury know that we're ready? We are. May be seated. Good afternoon, everyone. Let the record reflect parties are present, counsel is present, and the jury is all present. Thank you. Dr. Gibby, you're still under oath. Mr. Egan.
Just the ventricles have been distended because of this normal pressure hydrocephalus. The other thing I think that's important is you don't see white matter disease out here in these watershed areas of white matter, which you would typically see in aging, in hypertension, diabetes, some of these other non-specific things. You can scroll up a little bit. What he has are these lesions right near the corpus callosum, which may or may not be related to the vaccine. That was the question that the defense counsel was asking. But I think the MRI is very important to be able to see that he doesn't have other things in his brain that would be causing comorbidities, the challenges that he's having with his current neurology.
In your opinion, what effect did the ski collision and what happened to him there have to do with his stress and anxiety?
Well, I think two things happened to him. I think one, that, and we've already talked a little bit about it, this was a man who was talkative, boisterous, a little over the top at times, and that pattern, because of his frontal lobe injury, accelerated to the point where after 15 minutes it's hard to have a conversation with him because he's repetitive and goes around in circles, and he's very bright and very intellectual if you're discussing some intellectual matter, but when you're discussing his state of affairs, his personal life, he obsesses about it. And the second thing I think that's happened to him is his mind, meaning the way he comes to think about what's happening to him in his life. And some of that may be from brain injury, some of that's just his lifetime personality style, but he has become obsessed with trying to return himself to the level of functioning he perceived he had before this accident. And I make no judgment.
Doing what now? Say that again.
His assessment of the life he had before.
He's obsessed with getting back to that.
He's obsessed with getting back to that. He and I had a discussion that not every problem he encountered in everyday life, when he couldn't remember where he put his keys, not every problem was a consequence of injuries suffered in this accident. Some of that was just normal aging. For me, the primary consequence was his emotional and behavioral regulation, and then the impact it had on his mind, his perception of who he is and who he was. From his view, he is not the person he was. From his view, he has lost Terry Sanderson. And this is what he said to me at one point when I interviewed him.
Sure. Okay. You may. So looking at 43P, I mean, it's a demonstrative exhibit. So